have you ever wished for your Pestilence to reach more than 1400 RPM? Because if you ever did, well, congratulations, your wishes come true. I do have a build that can make your Pestilence go more than 1400 RPM, and to be honest, it is really crazy to actually even see that weapon fire that fast, like seriously. Now, Pestilence did receive the buff, which increases its base damage and RPM at the same time, but with this build, we're going way beyond that. Now, I also have a way to show you how you can make your Pestilence a no-reload Pestilence. Yes, you don't have to worry about reloading the weapon at all, plus get the RPM and the damage buff at the same time. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a solo player or you're playing in a group. It doesn't really matter. The build works in both ways. So let me show you how you can get that as well. Alright, now first of all, let's take a look at the weapon itself, the Pestilence, and see what it has to offer us in this new update. Well, you can already see that I have more than 1400 RPM, which is 1431, and I'll show you, don't worry, how you can achieve that as well. It's actually pretty easy, to be honest. Now, you can see I don't have any weapon expertise on my weapon because I don't like to add expertise when I'm making build videos for everyone, because I just, you know, for new players and returning players, they may not have that expertise maxed out or anything. Like, I'm not one of those guys going to add plus 20 expertise on a weapon, on a build, and say that, oh, this build is cracked, the weapon is cracked, it's doing crazy damage, because that extra damage is extra damage, and I don't like to add that at all when I'm making build videos. Maybe later on for myself I might add it, but when I'm making the build, I don't add expertise much, unless the weapon is my super favorite weapon, okay? That's like being the chameleon, for example, you can see. Now, anyway, so we have our, obviously, the damage to target out of cover and damage to armor on this. And the reload speed is also fairly low. You can actually get lower than this. You can get less than 3 seconds of reload. But then we don't have to worry about that because I already mentioned that we have pretty much no reload on it. But if you ever had to reload your weapon, you will be reloading under 3 seconds. Now, the main damage source of the Pestilence previously was the Plague of the Outcast talent, because whenever you just shoot your weapon, you build up the stacks and it deals insane amount of damage over time, if I should say, which was really high damage, and it's still the same. But the cool thing about this talent, it scales on your weapon damage or amplified damage, whatever type of damage you have in your build, it kind of scales on it. And in this build, we can hit very close to 900k per tick. Yes, very close to 900k per tick. This is kind of crazy, to be honest, not gonna lie. So we're not relying on this though, although the damage is really high. However, the damage on our own weapon is doing very high as well, because we're firing a weapon at 1400 plus RPM. I mean, come on. So obviously our damage is good, but the Plague of the Outcast is pretty much the icing on the cake. Now, unfortunately, the only downside of the Pestilence is that you don't have any sort of you know, like crit chance or crit damage on it. So that's the thing. So it will be a little bit harder to build. But don't worry, you can just add a bunch of crit chance on your build and should be fine. I'll show you the build, don't worry about that. So that's pretty much my main Pestilence, the weapon, the primary here. Now for the secondary, you can use whatever you want. I have Lefty here. I like using the shotgun, even though I don't use it, but I like having it. I never even optimized that damage to armor. It's been like this for a year, but just, I like having this. I don't know, I feel like it's lucky for me. I don't know, I just have it. So anyway, so that's the weapons. Now, as for the gear set, I'm actually using the Umbra, obviously Umbra Initiative here, because that's how we're going to increase our RPM and damage all at the same time. Plus, we're going to get healing at the same time. Yeah, that's why I love using Umbra nowadays rather than anything else, to be honest. Like, especially when I'm solo. Umbra is just my go-to choice here. Now, 2-piece gives us 15% of crit chance. We also get reload speed here, which is good if you ever want to reload the weapon, which I mentioned you don't have to worry about reload at all. But the crit chance is more than welcome because we need it, because the Pestilence doesn't have any crit chance at all. So yeah. Now for the 4-piece, we get the talent where we get all the damage and RPM and healing all at the same time. Now since we're using the chest piece of Umbra, we actually increases that stacks from 50 to 100. So that allows us to get 120% of crit damage and 40% of RPM boost, which is quite a lot, to be honest. And that's how we're getting our damage. This is pretty much the damage talent here. Now, if you're a new player, returning player, don't know how this set works, but all you have to do is stay in cover for 5 seconds. You build up the stacks. Now, once you build up the stacks, you get out of cover, and now you have 120% of crit damage and 40% of RPM. Now, while you're in out of cover and you're shooting your weapon, which is, you know, hitting really hard because of the crazy RPM and damage, you're building more stacks too while standing. And that stack is your healing stack. So if you take too much damage, you can just get back in cover and that will regenerate your armor there. And that actually a pretty good regen, to be honest. I mean, it's free, basically. You can get regen whenever you want. Just get in cover and it'll heal your armor. So you don't have to worry about armor kit at all, right? It's pretty fun, to be honest. It just regenerates your armor really well. Now, if you use the backpack, that's a lot of, like, regen. That's very, very good regen. But we're not using the backpack here, so we don't have to worry about that. But if you ever did, the backpack regen is pretty strong. Really, really strong. As for my talent here, I'm using weapon damage, crit damage, and crit damage. Most of my gear set actually farmed in a way where I can change the weapon damage core attribute to blue core, like the armor core. So if you can farm something like this, that'll be useful, because maybe you want a bit more armor, then you can change this to blue core. Although I don't think you would ever need that, because remember, this region that I talked about, this doesn't scale on how much armor you have. I believe so, because I kind of tried it. Didn't work like that. So it just works, well, like when you're in cover, it regenerates the exact same amount of armor, basically. So it kind of don't affect on how much armor you have. It's not like the normal armor regen that you get from something like Memento or like a gear set or a brand set, something like that. So yeah, but still having the core attribute changeable, it's nice. So you can add more armor if you ever need to. Now, as for the next piece, I have the mask here, which has weapon damage, and crit damage mod. Then the other one, I have my knee pads over here with the weapon damage and crit damage. Again, I farmed it in a way where I can change the weapon damage to blue core if I want to. So yeah, that. Ignore the loadout name. It's kind of true, though. That's how it's working. Now, the next piece I have is the gloves, which is, again, I farmed it in a way. You can see weapon damage, crit damage. I can change it to whatever I want. So yeah, that's my 4-piece of Umbra. Now, where else we can get that extra rate of fire and damage? Well, the new holster from this season, which is the Centurion Holster. This is where we're getting that extra rate of fire, the 20% and 20% of weapon damage, which is pretty much like a backpack damage talent or a chest piece damage. That's obliterate, pretty much, you know, right in the holster. And then we have magazine size and reload speed at the same time. Yes, at the same time. You can get all of these buff present in your Pestilence at the same time. I'll show that in the shooting range later on. Don't worry about it. So definitely stick around for that. Now, it stays for 12 seconds. I would kind of love it for 15 seconds, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much the reason why we're getting so much RPM and so much damage from the Pestilence coming up, because of the Umbra and the Centurion Holster giving us crazy amount of RPM. Now, as for the final piece, I have a Sheshka backpack here. You can use whatever backpack you want, but I chose Sheshka because I already mentioned we need that crit chance. Now, Sheshka, I mean, it's 8%. It used to be 10%, but, well, it is what it is, I guess. So I'm using a Sheshka here with obviously weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, and crit damage mod. We have a Vigilance talent here, which gives us 25% of weapon damage. Now, that's mainly for, like, group. Like, when I'm in group, I have the Vigilance here. But if you're playing solo and you still want a damage talent, I recommend something like the Unstoppable Force, because that's pretty much the same damage as Vigilance. You just need to build it up by getting, kills on it. And since you're solo, you shouldn't be having any problem building up that, kill count. So that. Now, if you want more survivability, if you're solo, then I recommend using Bloodsucker. You can actually get away by using Bloodsucker and never change any of your, like, core to armor, because Bloodsucker will give you crazy amount of bonus armor. And that's actually a better than changing your, weapon damage core to armor. You know why? Because every time you change a weapon damage core to an armor, you lose 15% of weapon damage. Now, if you change 2 of them, you lost 30% of weapon damage. Where using the Bloodsucker talent on the backpack, you just lost 25% of weapon damage and you gained so much of bonus armor. Yeah, that's why I recommend Bloodsucker. If you ever wanted survivability, go for Bloodsucker, because Umbra is taking care of that regen, so your armor will regenerate. Bloodsucker will keep giving you that bonus armor, so it'll keep you alive. So that's for, when you're solo, that is. But if you want damage talent as a solo player, then obviously go for the Unstoppable Force, like I mentioned. And if you're playing in a group, then just slap it a Vigilance talent. That's it. Yeah. So that's pretty much the backpack. Now, if I show you my stats over here, you can see I have like 45% crit chance. If I maxed out my holster, it will be 45%. I actually kind of want to change one of the crit damage to crit chance to make it even more, like maybe 55% crit chance or something like that. Maybe anything more than 50 should be fine. So if you're having that trouble, definitely change that crit damage to crit chance, because we do have a lot of damage, which you'll see in the shooting range. Don't worry about that. But yeah, you can do that. Since I'm playing with players that has Coyote Mask, I keep it like this, so I get that buff from Coyote anyway. But if you're playing solo, then definitely get more crit chance, okay? Definitely do that, right? So that's my stats there. And that's pretty much the build. I do have a healing drone here because it kind of heals me passively a little bit, so that's fine because we can't use a shield with the Pestilence, obviously. You can also use a decoy if you want, or a turret if you want, whatever you want. Whatever skill you want to use over here, you can do that. I just use a healing drone because it just heals me a little bit, so yeah. So that's basically the build. Now let me show you how much damage you can do and how you can activate the holster there and get that no reload for the the Pestilence in the shooting range. So let me show you that. All right, so I'm at the shooting range here. I'm actually in this side because this is where it's easy to show you the Plague of the Outcast damage than over there, because that target dies way too quickly and it doesn't spread the Outcast damage. It's good over here. Anyway, so before I show you the Pestilence damage and all that, I need to show you how you can activate the holster very well. Like, the holster has 2 different types of bonuses, right? Technically 4, but 2 different parts of it. And it changes, and you need to kind of recognize which one you're getting, right? So let me tell you how it actually looks visually, that which buff you have. So first of all, you're going to swap your weapon to the pistol here, and then you're going to swap back to your weapon, the primary. And you can see you have this kind of Spartan looking helmet there. As long as that helmet area is empty, as you can see, it's kind of empty, that's the RPM buff. But when the helmet is filled, like it's fully white, you can see the gap is filled. That's the other buff. That is the more ammo and the reload speed buff. So remember that first. That's why I wanted to tell you first, okay? When you have this, that's the RPM buff. When you have this, that's the reload buff, okay? But you can get both of them in the same weapon. Now, how you do that? Because if you keep swapping your primary and secondary, as you see, you're just going to keep swapping the same buff over and over again. Like my Pestilence got the RPM buff. My lefty got the more ammo buff and reload buff, but I can never add that back to the Pestilence yet because my Pestilence has only 100 ammo. So how I can do that? Well, pistol. You switch to your pistol because pistol never changes your buff. So when you change it to pistol, you go back to Pestilence, and now look at that. I have 150 ammo. See? And I also have the RPM buff. It won't show it, but you will feel it. It's active. Both the buff is active in one weapon. So let me just show you again. If you go to the pistol and you go back, as you can see, we have the RPM boost. If I get out, we have Umbra's RPM. And look at how fast the Pestilence is firing. That is crazy. That is crazy. That is crazy. And I'm going to show you the tick damage of that first. Don't worry, it's close to like 900k. So let me just stack the Pestilence. That's why I chose these targets over here to show you the highest. As you can see, look at that, 820. But that's because we lost the buff. If I can get the buff, that'll be more than that. So most of the time you will lose the buff if you swap your Pestilence. Obviously, the Plague of the Outcast buff will be gone. But if you swap back to it, it'll be back. You just have to shoot the enemy again to get the Plague of the Outcast back again. Okay? Because whenever you swap the weapon, obviously you're no longer gonna take damage the enemies. But when you swap back and shoot the enemy, it'll be back again. So don't worry about that. Now, as for the reload thing, like how you reload your weapon like instantly, so you can see I'm gonna fire some like rounds over here, so I empty my mag a little bit. Now if I want to reload the weapon, all I have to do is like swap and swap back, and then it's basically reloaded. I don't have to do it twice, but it is reloaded, as you see here. I'm gonna just build up the stacks. I'm gonna shoot again. As you can see, I have both the buff. Like I have the reload buff applied on me, right? But I'm still firing so fast. That's why both the buff is active at the same time. Everything's dead. Never mind. So as you see, I have 1 ammo here. Let me reload the weapon. Look at this. If I do it like this, look at that. It's reload. You just need the fill icon, like the helmet with the white icon that is full. If you get that, it reloads your weapon automatically. As you can see, you just have to probably swap it twice, if not once. Depends on which buff you have on you at that time. But don't change, like don't swap with your primary and secondary. Just swap it with your pistol. Just swap it with your pistol. You'll get both the buff active at the same time. And as you saw that we're doing crazy amount of damage. Like we're doing more than 600, I believe 20 to 50k on the body as a crit. And that's your Pestilence damage on 1400 RPM. And then we have the Plague of the Outcast that is taking way more, like very close to 900k there. So that's kind of crazy as well. So yeah, pretty good damage, guys. Really, really good damage. Definitely give it a try. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section because, that kind of helps the YouTube algorithm, I guess. And also leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Till then, peace.